Uh, Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on the location that you're joining in from. And welcome to this session of MENAP Deliverability Summit that we're having. So this session is going to be very interesting, between me and Sridhar. Sridhar here, Sridhar is from Validity, and I am Chaitanya, and I head uh, email business globally for Netcore. Uh, and we're going to talk about a bit on, I think Tejas has covered quite a bit on overall reputation, and then BIMI, and all the DKIM, DMARC, and the other bit of technical stuff. We want to keep it lighter with email strategy, and maybe I'll Sri, why don't you introduce yourself, and then maybe we can get this started.
Sure. Thanks, Chaitanya. So, my name is Sridhar. I've been in the email industry for about 14 years, and most part of it was on the receiver side and mailbox provider side. So, I was working as a postmaster at AOL. That's where I started my career. So, doing all the anti-abuse stuff and blocking spam, and so I was doing that for the longest time ever. And then I moved on to 250 OK, and at 250 OK, I was working more on the email strategy side, a little on the product side, and now part of Validity, pretty much the same line of work.
I know I've known Sridhar for the last like almost like 12 years now. I think
Yeah,
people
I guess
started off
from
as
the
postmasters.
yeah,
Yeah,
the UOL and the AOL days.
right. Well, it's true. Uh, Quite a few stories there. Uh, uh, See, from email as a channel, right? Email as a channel in India, and primarily in the MENAP region, right? It's one of those critical channels that most of the brands, and primarily all the brands who've been heavily vested on the online business are using. Um, and they say about the US, on the US counterparts, they say for every dollar that is invested, you get about $38 in return. I think these parts, you'd probably expect a slightly lower return, but definitely, nevertheless, email is that critical channel, anyways, right? um, and so and this pandemic, precisely, post pandemic, let me put it this way, post pandemic, what we have seen is many brands, many brands that who've have seen a jump in the overall email interactions that they were getting, email engagement rates that they were getting over like before pandemic versus during or post pandemic, in whichever phase that you want to see it. They've definitely seen a jump in the overall trend, meaning the email as a channel is becoming more and more effective. And at the same time, the um, overall transition from email being just an ROI driven channel to a channel that also drives brand equity for a brand. That there's a there's a shift in the way that brands have been using email as a channel, right? And that has been showing them very positive results in terms of, that's one of the reasons why the engagement has also increased, right? um, and what we've also seen specifically in MENAP region, right? A lot of offline brands have started turning to online world. You name retails, let's say, even you could probably uh, banks for the larger portion, right? With this whole pandemic situation has sort of accelerated them to get into email as a channel. And and a lot of these brands are sort of first time movers, meaning they've not done historically with, they've not done email well before, and then they're just getting into, they've been collecting data, but then they have not used that data for email programs anymore. So that's something that's just starting. That's one of the trend that we have seen in India and MENAP region. So Sri, from your experience as the deliverability from a deliverability standpoint, what do you think are the best practices, or that a brand should be looking at when they are first starting up with their email program?
Sure. Yeah, that's an interesting question, and as you rightly mentioned, we are seeing a significant shift in not just the kind of brands that are getting online. Even the mail volume has increased significantly. Like I was presenting in yesterday's our state of email webinar, and globally. The mail volumes are like almost 2x compared to the previous quarter of the first quarter of January 2020.
True.
And
Yeah.
It's similarly the case like when we look at the metrics in say spam trap, even the spam traps have increased. And if you look at fortunately, engagement data looks a little more good, where you're seeing a lot more engagement because subscribers are expecting emails online, and that's how they are going ahead and engaging and reacting with it. So, getting to your specific question around what brands should be doing when they're moving from, say, an offline model to an online model. A couple of things from an email perspective. The first thing I've seen. Quite a few brands, they might have, as you mentioned, they have a database of users that they can go to, but they might not have a consistent sending domain, a promotional or email marketing domain. It's usually just an occasional email that they send, maybe from their root domain. So first thing I would recommend is looking into, say, having a dedicated subdomain, so that you dedicate it, say, every mailbox provider out there recommends that you have dedicated subdomains for your email marketing stream, your transactional stream, your notification, and so on. So look into ensure that you have a subdomain, and if it's a new subdomain, ensure that you properly warm that up. So warming up is again from an IP perspective. If you're already so if you have a huge database and you're moving online, definitely there's going to be a huge surge in volume. So maybe you're on a shared IP range and you might want to look at a dedicated IP range. So I would leave it up to you, Chaitanya. What is usually a ESP recommends might be the right volume to move to a dedicated IP, but of course, both of them have that benefit. So that's one thing you need to look at. The other thing is when you have these huge set of volume of email addresses, ensure you do some kind of a cleanup on that. You don't want to send to that say a 10-year-old address which just walked into your shop and signed up for something. Just want to make sure that, hey, that email address is still active and it's still and it's not turned into a spam trap. So a basic list cleanup. There's a lot of vendors out there. Your ESP will do it for you. So just at least taking care of those typo domains and things like that. That's pretty essential. And again, the other thing I recommend is like when you are moving online, just don't go into a batch and blast mode. One of the major things that mailbox providers look very closely is volumes. So if you are ramping up your volume, just make sure that you are creating segments of, say, your active users. Try to engage with your active users. And there's one basic formula that I always recommend is never go 2x your previous volume. So if you're sending to 100 subscribers, just don't go, your next mail stream is like 200. Try to ramp it up slowly so that mailbox providers can distinguish between what a spammer is and what is a normal mailer. So just use the proper cadence and use the right segments. And I think, yeah, that should be a good start with you. And then I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other strategy that your email service provider will provide you once you reach that stage.
I agree. Okay. So to sum it up, your the choice of domain, whether it's a dedicated subdomain on how you want to choose a domain, that's one key decision that a brand has to make when they're starting up an email program, and then and maybe a pre-check, whether it is about using list validation services, whether it is identifying those segments that can data segments that can probably start with the right kind of engagement. Maybe that's the second step that you're suggesting. And third is when you're doing a warm up, you follow a proper cadence in terms of you doing don't ramp it up exponentially, but go in a gradual ramp up. That's what so these are the key takeaways that you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Right. And in terms, so one point that you touched upon is in the dedicated and shared IP as a point, right? Um, so from an ESP standpoint, what we suggest is unless you have a minimum volume of a 50,000 emails a day, you don't explicitly need a dedicated IP or IP or a domain. You can technically go below that, but then that's what we recommend from an ESP standpoint. I think every ESP has their own way of getting the numbers there. Uh, uh,
Yeah, that's
from
true.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, actually, both of them have their benefits and demerits. So,
Yes.
at least from a shared IP, I've seen like in the mailbox provider, if you are sending a really low volume, and
Hmm.
if you're on a dedicated IP, there's a chance that your reputation, that
Hmm.
needle will move very slowly, because end of the day, all the filters out there are designed for high volume senders. And the collateral damage is usually the low volume B2B kind of senders are the collateral damage. So that's why if you are on a shared IP, and I'm pretty sure every ESP out there have their own tiers of shared IPs, and if you are really following all the best practices, you should not face major deliverability issues. And with the advent of domain reputation at places like Gmail and Yahoo, you can, if you have your authentication in place, you can still have a very healthy inboxing with shared IP. So there's no
Got it.
push to a dedicated IP unless it's really necessary.
Right, right. That's rightly said. That's rightly said. And since you just brought the topic of Gmail and Yahoo, and I think in these regions, right? Let's say in India, MENAP, and in fact Southeast Asia, large portions of Southeast Asia, you'd find Gmail and Yahoo take up. In fact, Gmail takes up the majority, and the second best, second in the line is Yahoo, takes up the entire list of you know. Uh, if you look at, let's say, any brand's list, about 90% of the list would be comprising of Gmail and Yahoo, and about 10% or 10-15% at max will be other domains, other local mailbox providers. But yeah, 85 to 90%, I'd probably say, would be of Gmail and Yahoo. And I so see, every mailbox provider has their own way of looking at a mail stream, looking at engage, how their filters have been built. Like you've been with AOL, I've been with United Online, which is another ISP in the US. But then every mailbox provider has their own way of building filters, and their own way of looking at emails and how they filter emails. Now, any specific points, tips that you suggest for, let's say, looking at Gmail, for example, maybe Gmail and Yahoo, if you can touch upon both of those mailbox providers, I think we would be addressing a majority of the problem
Yeah,
for our
great.
audience.
Yeah, I keep on saying you can never get wrong with Gmail if you have Gmail impression. So so it's pretty interesting, and as you rightly said, there's like reputation started in the early 2000s when we like right from the days of the Bayesian filters, when you just
Right.
had a blacklist and a whitelist, and that is not going to work. You have to move on. So that's how reputation. So initially started with IP reputation. Every mailbox provider out there has some flavor of IP reputation placed. And most of the time, IP reputation is more like a mail throttling, just to handle all your MXs out there, just so that they don't get just burned out with all the volume. Because again, as you know, there's always those DDoS, spammers try to DDoS those networks and try to bring it down. So IP reputation is still there in place at, say, Gmail and Yahoo. Now, to what extent or what degree keeps on varying. So everybody, I think somewhere around 2008 is when Gmail wanted to look into domain reputation. And with IPv6 at that time, IPv6 was supposed to be the thing, and so they thought they have to move on to something which is more better in the reputation filtering perspective. So of course, Gmail started with domain reputation, and they started looking at the actual mail from domain and the hello and the HLO domains and so on, whatever you can tag on from the SPF and things like that. So they started with the basic domains, and then slowly started moving on to, once Deakin came into the picture, they started trusting the Deakin signature domain. So that plays a really, very important role from a domain reputation calculation. And the other thing is they also look at, to some extent, at the URLs and what are the domains inside your email. So Gmail is heavy on the domain reputation side, and the other thing which everybody keeps on saying is engagement. Gmail heavily looks into engagement, and engagement. It actually both of them are connected. Like based on your domain reputation, Gmail can look into the engagement. What are the kind of activities? So there are quite a few positive and negative signals that, from a reputation perspective, that you can look at. Say. So even if you look at domain reputation, pretty basic signals like, hey, the opens and the clicks and maybe the dwell time on the emails and things like that, and the click to open rates, things like that are, of course, recorded at Gmail. And you have the traditional signals too, like I'm pretty sure you know, like earlier, it's all based on this is spam and this is not spam report. So if one of the basic decision making for the filters is if your mail goes to spam folder and if it put back to the inbox, I remember my KPIs as an analyst was connected to that. So those are basic signals. So excuse me. So similarly, Gmail. So I would recommend Gmail. Yes, look at your engagement. Clearly, Gmail is looking at it, so it's imperative that you look at. I'm pretty sure your ESPs have their own KPIs that they recommend that you look at. Apart from that, your cadence and the frequency of emails that you send, that's pretty important. Gmail has now got something called Smart Unsubscribe. So when people say, hey, 1 email per week, 5 email per week, all that volume is fine. It depends on your audience. But end of the day, if your particular audience has not engaged with the last 10 emails or last 5 emails, it's a good sign that, hey, that person is not happy with the frequency. Take them to the preference center and give them options to either, say, have a weekly digest or monthly digest or something. Give them options, right? So that data is available with Gmail, so they will start utilizing it. Apart from that, I also recommend with Gmail, go ahead and try all their beta products. They keep on trying new things. There's Gmail annotations. There's
markups.
Yeah, exactly. It has different names.
I know, Outlook has a different name to it.
Yeah. So recommend using Gmail, all the Gmail, all the beta products. And that will surely get you better mileage when you are trying to send to Gmail. So yeah, and sorry, not to ignore Yahoo over there. So Yahoo is again looking at the domain reputation. Their FVL requires that you deconsign the email. So that's a good indicator that that's one of the key factors they look at. So similarly, they look at engagement. I also think that at least from Yahoo, just having a little more insight from on Yahoo, I can say that if you see some kind of throttling at Yahoo, it's a good time to go ahead and push back on the volume of emails. So ESPs usually have something built in, like, hey, if you see a high volume of TSS or for errors, try to cut back on volume. Don't keep on sending the same volume, because that's just going to drop your reputation. And a lot of these reputation, you have to also think from a perspective like, why do they utilize this? As I mentioned, if you are you're part of a spam run, if you have a lower reputation, you're going to get throttled. So the best thing to do at that time is just stay back, give it some time, and then try sending. So I recommend cutting down on the volume if you see it. So another thing about Gmail and Yahoo is before they do throttling, they do some level of spam filtering also. So if you see your open rates have like dropped suddenly, it means that your volume of emails have started going to spam folders. So start looking, look for those red flags, and I think you have to be very much proactive, not just reactive, when you're trying to resolve issues at Gmail and Yahoo.
I agree to the point that you have to be very much proactive. You need to keep on monitoring your metrics, right?
I think I have a follow-up question for you, Chaitanya, for that. So from an email service provider's perspective, what do you like? What are the key factors that you recommend that any marketer out there, like you have your dashboard, you have your alerts and things like that? What do you recommend that they should keep on noticing that if there's ever like a drop in reputation, they take that step as soon as possible.
So, see, from an ESP standpoint, there are a bunch of metrics that are available on the dashboards, as you rightly said. I mean, opens and clicks are sort of table stakes, right? There's much more. There's much more beyond opens and clicks that we sort of showcase. Like one of the point that you mentioned that you're sending an email to a bunch of users, but they are not opening it, and Gmail is going to utilize it for spam filtering. So to that end, just extending to that point, as an ESP, what we show is the recency frequency metrics of all your customer engagement that's happening. So you actually know who's your best customer, who's your next best customer, and then break it down into people who are sort of engaging with you in a mediocre way, but then people who are sort of completely inactive, has been completely inactive in a time frame or in a certain period of campaigns, right? So that gives, and we sort of make that actionable too with our AI engine that comes out, right? So we make it actionable, and we suggest what is the next course of action that a marketer needs to take on those kind of user segments. Let's say if the users have to be sunsetted, let's say put them back into a win back program, and then after that you put them into a sunset. So all of that is sort of from an ESP standpoint, is something that we suggest. And so one is what you give as an ESP, but then there are some other metrics that are also available with via Google Postmaster. There are some seed list monitoring that we suggest brands to do. While there are some direct metrics that are available, the way we'd suggest is that you look at opens, clicks as to begin with, and then you drill down into domain-wise metrics. You drill down into frequency of campaigns that you're doing to a particular user, and then see if you can control the frequency to a specific user segment. Now, not every user is sort of engaging with you in the same way, right? Let's say as a brand, I might have daily newsletters, but then not every user might be interacting with me daily. So break it down. You slice and dice the user base, and then choose, let's say, who's your, again, a person who is engaging with you more frequently. He's receptive to the content. Then you give them, if he's expecting your email, then you give them the content. But a person who is sort of interacting with you less, you slow them down. You slow them down in your mail frequencies, and that's one of the strategy that we suggest to build the right kind of reputation at Gmail, for example, where especially they are looking at user engagement as one of the key metrics for their overall spam filter side. So that's on the ESP standpoint.
Yeah, just to add that when you spoke about key metrics, I completely agree. I think I always say email deliverability is like a puzzle. So there are a lot of pieces to it. So the more pieces you get together, you can try to get the complete picture.
Yes.
So Google Postmaster tools, SNDS, seedless monitoring, a lot of reputation tools out there. Yeah.
There are a bunch of reputation tools that you might also want to look at to actually to measure the reputation. Right?
Yeah. I think the GPT is pretty important. The value of GPT, I think, is underutilized. Just getting that kind of information back, even SNDS also. There's a lot of debate about the colors they see over there. It's not correct, but that's fine. I believe all data is useful. It's at the end of the day how you utilize it. Especially at Yahoo, one more thing I'd like to add is the team has been saying implement list and subscribe header. So this is something a lot of brands don't utilize. And again, something which is imperative, like if a mail goes to the, if a user is not interested in the email, give them options to easy unsubscribe rather than just going ahead and marking the mail as spam. So there are some simple best practices which people tend to ignore, but I think it makes a big, if you're in the longer run, it's really important.
Yes, absolutely. Sri, I think we have a question here. What kind of volume do you suggest if one is getting a TSS 04 at Yahoo?
Sure. So I don't have, to be honest, I don't have a direct answer for it, but I can try to explain why you would be getting a DSS of 4. So first, we'll have to understand how reputation is calculated at all these mailbox providers. So usually, I tend to say that, hey, reputation is like a credit score. Like the better your reputation, the more volume that you can send. So you can think about it as a good, bad, and ugly kind of a situation, or good, neutral, and kind of situation. So if you are on a neutral reputation and for whatever reason, if you have a small spike in complaints, you might start getting TSS of 4. So in that case, I would recommend just try to cut down your volume by 20 or 30%. So and you should see a lot more mails getting accepted or delivered in your case. But if you say your reputation isn't bad, then you might want to cut down your volume by 50%. So it depends on which layer of the reputation you're in. There's no easy way to know that. Your metrics, your open rates, and so on. If your open rates are like in single digits, there's a pretty good chance that your reputation is pretty low. So, or if your reputation is about, say, I'm talking about just total opens, not unique opens over here, at double digits, there's a lot more chance that your reputation might be a little bit more better. So, it depends on which level of reputation you're in. But it's a good idea to think about 30% to 50% reduction in your volume. I hope I answered that question. Yeah.
I think that does answer the question. So what you're saying is, you just look at your performance that has been so far, and then take that as a or a clue on where your reputation might be at Yahoo, and then the course of action has to be based on your reputation. You just cut down on the volumes and see if you can grow it back.
Yeah. And again, as you said, engagement also matters over here. When you're cutting down that audience, don't randomly cut down to 50%. Cut it down by segment. Cut it down by hey, it's a 6-month non-openers. Let them be the ones who are suppressed. So yeah.
Got it. That's an important one. Yes. Right. So let's say now that we were discussing about the overall a block or TSS04 and let's say if as a marketer, if I encounter a spam issue, let's say I've just discovered that my mails are landing in spam. If I want to diagnose it, and then I want to get my mails back into inbox. So what would you suggest? I mean, how do you think a marketer needs to look at the situation? What should be the approach from a marketer standpoint to solve the problem there?
Sure. So again, a couple of options are available. So definitely, most of the times there's a running joke, at least on the mailbox provider side. You know a problem only when your CEO does not receive the email. So it's usually someone who's complaining, hey, the mail has not landed, or things like that. But apart from that, just being on top of all the metrics that you're at, if you see like a sudden drop in the metrics that you're seeing, at least in case of our customers, they look at C-list placement and they see that from, say, inbox placement, it goes to spam folder placement. That's a good indication. There are other metrics also you can look at, like in place of Gmail. I wouldn't say that the tab placement is like more like a spam folder placement. Tab placement is still inbox. But again, if you see a significant shift in how the placements are changing, that can also be based on the content and also based on the complaints. You never know. So it's pretty important looking at, again, Gmail case. I would look at Google Postmaster tools. There is, of course, a delay in the data, but again, it's good to be on top of it and seeing, hey, if there's any change over there. And ultimately, I think looking at the other leading metrics also, like what is the purpose of your campaign? Like, is it just the end result? Is it to drive to your website? Then, hey, is there some click-to-open rates over there? Has that dropped? So then you have to start looking at the content of the email. The content is not relevant enough for that the transaction to be complete. So quite a few ways or tools to go ahead and diagnose these things. And I think once you diagnose, getting to the drawing board, you have to be very clear about, as I mentioned, looking at that engagement rates and looking at that creating those segments and sending to the right segments is really important. I've seen like once your domain, especially a Gmail, if it goes to bad or poor reputation, it takes a good 4 to 6 weeks or maybe even 8 weeks for that reputation repair to get completed.
To bounce back. Yeah.
Be patient. Make sure. I've seen people like even if the authentication or there's some technical issue too, that can also affect. So just when you are looking at all those diagnosis tools, look at if everything is still all right. And something else, even authentication also, something I recommend is like DMARC and so on. When you're looking at DMARC, one thing is the reports, you have to look at all the mail streams that are sending on your behalf. That's something which senders, as a marketer, you might be looking at your program and you might be looking at your delivery statistics, but there might be a different department in your organization which is sending with the same domain, and that reputation is going to get carried over to your program too. So you have to have a holistic view about all your sending. So that's where coming back to the initial idea of using subdomains, so that at least the mailbox providers can look at the subdomain reputation and make a favor just for your program rather than all of them under just one root level reputation.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. The great thoughts, Sri. I think I'll just add one more point to it. Let's say, if you've done all of it and then you're still confused on why your mails are landing in spam, call up your ESP.
Definitely, yeah. So that's something as a vendor we always recommend. Like we as email strategists, they'll come to us. So the first question is, have you reached out to their ESP? They have already seen this. They've been there, done that. They have all the solutions in place. You need to try that. Yeah. So only once that all of that, if that doesn't work, then of course you need to reach out. So
yeah, absolutely. I think we have a question again. If you're signing the emails with a subdomain, does Yahoo and Gmail also consider the reputation of the base domain or just the subdomain used in the DKIM signing? I think there's some advice to the point. Yeah, I'll take it up. Maybe I'll take that question up. So the way maybe primarily Gmail, right? Let's talk about Gmail because Gmail is heavy on domain reputation. The way Gmail looks at reputation is, of course, on the subdomain. But what we have also seen is that if you have too many subdomains under one main domain, and then if a good portion of those subdomains do bad emailing, somewhere that rubs off on the main domain too. Yeah. So you always, it's always in the best interest that you start with a subdomain. So that unique to that subdomain. Just make sure that you just because you have subdomains, you make, let's say, 10 or 20 subdomains, and then a good portion of them turn bad, then your main domain can also turn bad. With Yahoo also, I believe the same case applies. There's not much of a difference there in terms of calculating the reputation.
True. Completely agree. The other thing that I mentioned is the URLs. So are they, you might have the DKIM as the subdomain, but the URL is going to the root domain. If a mail is reported as spam, all the URL is also evaluated and that is given separate reputation. So it depends on how much you can isolate your mail stream. But like you said, there should be a reason behind that. There's no points, no showing 10, 15 different subdomains because that's just going to crash your complete reputation.
Yeah. True. I think we can probably pause here and wait for a couple of questions. I think we have about we're almost about time, or I think we have about 5 minutes more.
Yeah, I guess we're almost about time, but happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Okay, I think if there are no questions, I think we should be good.
Yeah.
All right. I think it was a great pleasure talking to you, Sri. And thanks,
Absolutely. Same here.
Andrew, for giving this opportunity. And
Yeah.
thanks for
everyone.
listening to us. Yeah, thanks everyone for listening to us.
Yeah.
But there are some clear takeaways for all of you folks here. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Until next time. Cheers. Bye-bye.